Hello and welcome to the Art of Caro. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this Edwardian Shirtwaist. This is a part of my Granny Weatherwax cosplay series, and if you're not familiar with her, Granny Weatherwax is a character from the Discworld series by Terry Pratchetts, and she's pretty awesome. I talk about her a lot in my first video, making her hat and hat pins. I'm gonna link that above in whichever corner that is, and also underneath. Yeah, so she's pretty awesome, and I'm gonna talk a bit about her clothes. She's described to have some very plain black dresses, and they are like utilitarian. They are all black, but they are black in a way that is described to be a functional black. It isn't black like black that keeps being black because you only wear it when you can keep clean. This is the kind of muddied, dusty, stained black that someone gets when they actually do hard work wearing these clothes. And I think that's pretty awesome, and that's a good excuse for all the cat hair that's on my clothes. It looks like it's serviceable clothes. It's like when she has been out with to take care of her goats or something like that. In Witches Abroad she says that she's wearing 3 vests, and in this context, due to the books having a UK author, I think the vests in this context means undergarments. It's UK slang. I looked it up because in the context, her wearing vests over top of the clothes, I think that's those are called waistcoats exclusively in UK, and vests are undergarments that often have no sleeves and is worn under other clothes. In the US it would be called an undershirt. So she dresses for the weather, so to speak. Yeah, I already have... Sorry, my cat is playing in the background. I already have a black skirt that will work with this, and I have a petticoat. Those two are 2 of the first projects I made while sewing clothes. And the black skirt is the same pattern that the constellation skirt are made of. So I'm gonna link that up here in whatever corner it's supposed to be linked up in, and also in the description box below. So to complete the dress, I'm going to make the top portion this shirtwaist, and I'm going to talk a bit later about the pattern I use and stuff like that. Yeah, so let's just get into the video. So I want to talk a bit about the changes I've made to this pattern. McCall's 8231. It's a Angela Clayton pattern. I did the smaller size of this and the shirtwaist, and it was way too wide in the shoulders for me, and I felt like it was made for someone with a larger bust than me. So I made some changes, and I also hated how the back looked. It looked really bad on me, and I don't know if I did something wrong or it just wasn't flattering on my build. So I made some pretty major changes, so it doesn't really look as the pattern it was from the beginning. One of the things I did was I took in the shoulders and made the armhole smaller, because it had a really big what's this called, ease or something like that in the underarm, which made it was like this much, which made it really hard to move in it. And I know for this type of clothing it's meant to be kind of tight around the arm side of the body, and then that will increase the mobility of the sleeve. So I moved towards that with the pattern. I also changed, instead of having it dip down in the back like this, I made the back one complete piece and made sure it doesn't flare out as much, and completely removed the tie. I also changed the neckline because it was really tight and it was really uncomfortable, and I also don't want to make the color that's included in this because of said tightness. And I changed the neckle now again to make it a bit tighter from my last mock-up, and I'm going to make the color after I assembled the other pieces so I can measure how it comes out in the fabric, and then I'm gonna add a color that's still kinda tight around the neck but leaves the front of my neck open here so I don't feel like I'm being strangled. I also raised this diagonal line up a bit because as I said, I think it would have looked nice on someone with a larger bust, but on me it came so far down, it looked like I had some really saggy boobs and I didn't like that look, so I raised that V line up so it gives me a bit of more perky bust instead of sagging bust, which it gave the illusion of when it was in the original. So I cut out the pieces out of this lovely cotton linen fabric that's kind of sort of like a gauze but not quite. As you can see, it's a bit transparent, which I wasn't originally intended to make this garment of, but I think it will be fine over the under layers. I don't think it will be causing a problem then, because this is going to be a Granny Weatherwax inspired project, and her wearing transparent clothing is... No, she wouldn't. Yeah, she likes to be dressed very proper. So I'm gonna get started on sewing and yeah, sorry that I didn't show you how I altered the pattern, but I'm still very new at this and I don't really know what I'm doing. I just started sewing clothes in 2021 maybe, and before that I hadn't really sewn any clothes at all, aside from a few garments that I sewed together with other people that had a lot more experience than me. So this whole altering patterns and stuff like that, that's I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. When I get a bit more comfortable, I'm going to try to make some videos on how I do the changes. But I can show you. This is what happened to the back piece. You can see, like, this is part that I took away, and I put together the back pieces, and so that's what I've done with this. Yeah, so let's get into the start of making this shirtwaist. I started out by putting gathering stitches in 2 rows on the front piece, and then I'm attaching that to the yoke. And gather it to the yoke. And then I'm stitching them together. And then I'm trimming down the seam allowance. And then I'm pressing the seam allowance up towards the yoke. And then I'm top stitching a bit above the seam line into the yoke, just to keep it all nice and neat, I think. And then I'm pinning the shoulder seam right sides together and stitching that. And then I'm pinning together the side seam and stitching that, and that's the wrong sides together. And then I'm trimming the seam allowance and turning it wrong side out, so now the right sides are together, and then I'm pinning it again to form a French seam. And then I'm pressing the side seams towards the back. And the shoulder seams towards the front. And then I'm pinning together the placket for the front, my outer fabric and my facing fabric. And then I'm trimming down the excess seam allowance and turning it right sides out, making sure to get that point nice and neat. And that was a thing I didn't need to stitch, so you're gonna see me fix that later on. I am now pinning that bottom placket to the front of the shirt. And here you can see me stitch over where I had stitched and folded before, so that's going to be cut away when I trim down the seam allowance here. And then I'm just cutting the neckline above the placket, being very careful. And then I'm turning the bottom placket towards the outside, and then I am pressing that down and pinning it. And pinning it again, because I'm going to stitch on each side of the placket. And then I'm top stitching first on the outer edge of the bottom placket, and then the inner edge of the bottom placket. Just very, very close to the edge. And then I'm stay stitching the neckline. And then I'm pressing in the seam allowance on the facing of the yoke, the edges that's going towards the middle, the underside of the yoke, and the shoulder seam. And then I'm pinning those down and basting them, making sure that the ends of my threads are on the outside, so they will be easy to pull away later on. And then I am pinning the facing to the inside of the yoke. Covering up all my raw seams, making it look all nice and neat. And then I apparently forgot to film where I hand stitched down the facing of the yoke, so here is me removing the basting. Just a little update, the heat is out in my apartment. I woke up and it was 15 degrees Celsius in here before I turned on my heater, or like electrical heater, whatever it's called in English. So that wasn't fun. So hand stitching today has been really difficult because my finger gets really stiff. It's finally got to a comfortable level of heat in the apartment after several hours. But anyway, I want to talk about the top stitching I've done on the machine. And in Discworld, since this is meant to be a shirtwaist for Granny Weatherwax, in Discworld the sewing machine hasn't been discovered or invented yet. They have sort of spurs of industrial revolution, but no sewing machines that they've talked about yet, and certainly not in the ram tops where Granny Weatherwax is in Badass, wherever it's called. I think it's Badass in Lancra. There certainly isn't any sewing machines there, but I feel like if there is someone that could stitch with a machine precision when she hand stitches, it's Granny Weatherwax. So that's my headcanon for it anyway. And also I want to get this done before Halloween, and I wouldn't be able to do that with all the hand stitching with my stiff fingers right now. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. I did a pattern for the collar and I forgot to film it, and I also think I forgot to film putting the interfacing on, so that has happened, and I'm gonna stitch together the collar. I just did the stand collar and sort of made it go like this. Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed soon, but my mind is starting to shut down. It's gonna go in a diagonal line like that, and I think that will go nicely with the other lines in the construction, and it also will be a bit of a harsh line, I think, which will look good for Granny Weatherwax. So that has happened. I'm going to continue stitching and then I'm going to go to bed. So bye. So here I am attaching the interfacing to the collar, and then I'm pinning together my both my collar pieces and stitching them, pinning them together, right sides together, and then I'm stitching around the collar, and then I'm trimming down the seam allowance and turning it right sides out and pressing it so it looks all nice and neat. And then I'm attaching the collar to the neckline, and I should have probably stay stitched my pieces a bit earlier because this fabric was didn't really want to stay its shape easily. Then I'm stitching down the collar to the neckline, and I'm pressing the seam allowance of the neckline up towards the collar, and then I'm trimming down the seam allowance from the neckline and folding over the collar and pressing down the inside seam allowance to the neckline and pinning that down. And then I am basting the collar to the neckline. And hand stitching on the collar. And then I'm removing my basting. And then I am easing stitches on the side of the sleeve, and then I'm sewing gathers at the top of the sleeve. And this is the over portion of the sleeve, like the top portion of the sleeve. And then I'm pinning together one of the side seams and easing the upper sleeve to the lower sleeve. And I'm attaching them first wrong sides together and stitching it at the 5mm seam allowance. Then I'm trimming that seam allowance down a bit, turning it around so the right sides are together now. And then I'm pinning that. And then I'm stitching it at 1 centimeter and forming a French seam. Then I'm pressing that French seam towards the top sleeve, and then I'm pressing in the seam allowance on the placket for the sleeve and basting that down. Then I'm pinning the placket to the sleeve and sewing down the placket to the sleeve and cutting into the seam allowance to allow it to fold. And then I'm pressing it in, so I'm pressing it so that it folds toward the outside of the sleeve and pinning it down. And then I'm top stitching the placket down. Then I'm removing the basting, cutting into the other placket at the point where my pattern indicated, and then I'm folding down the seam allowance of the pointy part of the placket. And then I'm pinning down the seam allowance and basting it to keep it in place. And then I'm pinning the placket to the sleeve. Making sure to match up those dots. And then I'm stitching the placket to the sleeve. Pressing it, turning it right side out. So that point is on the outside of the sleeve. I have to keep looking at my pattern instructions because I get a bit confused about this part. Yeah, so I'm pressing it down, trying to get it in the right place, overlapping the other placket a bit. And then I'm pinning it down. And then I'm top stitching, and then you get to the point where it overlaps the other placket, and then I make sure that it overlaps properly when I stitch around the point. Then I stitch down back again and then across. And this turned out really lovely. I'm gonna use that method another time. And then I'm just putting a couple of stitches where a raw seam allowance edge was on the back side. I think that might have been something I did wrong. And then I am pinning together the other side of the other seam of the sleeve and stitching it, and then turning it wrong sides out, pinning it again, making another French seam, and then I'm stitching that, and then I'm pressing that towards the bottom sleeve. I don't know, I just press the seam allowance to lie flat, and then I'm sewing gathering stitches at the lower edge of the sleeve, 2 rows. And then I'm preparing the cuff. I'm attaching some interfacing. And when that is done, I'm just giving it a bit of a press. And then I'm folding up the seam allowance on one edge of the cuff. And then I'm pinning that down. And then I'm basting it. And then I'm marking my cuff just to make it easier to get even gatherers. Then I'm pinning the cuff to the sleeve. And pinning in different spots, and then I'm going to... Yeah, I had some reference points I needed to transfer from the pattern that disappeared when I put on the interfacing. Yeah, and then I continue to pin, and then I'm drawing together my gatherers and evening them out. Try to tie the knot, but evening out the gatherers and pinning them down even more. And then I'm stitching those together. And then I'm pressing the seam allowance up towards the cuff and trimming the seam allowance a bit. And then I'm folding the cuff right sides together and pinning the sides and stitching the sides. Then I'm trimming down the seam allowance, turning the cuff right sides out and making sure the points look nice. And then I'm pinning the inner seam allowance to the cuff, and then I'm basting that together and hand stitching it. And then I'm removing the basting and pressing that fold so it looks all nice. Then I am putting the sleeves into the arm side, and I am being very careful to match up the markings and to then evenly distribute the gatherers. It's really big sleeves going into not very big arm size. And then I'm stitching the sleeve to the arm side, and I'm putting this together wrong sides together to begin with because I'm going to make another French seam. Trimming the seam allowance. And then I'm going to turn it so the right sides are together, wrong sides out. And from my other videos you might remember I'm doing French seams at the arm side because that's most comfortable for my sensory issues. And then I'm stitching the arm side again, being very careful to keep the gatherers even. And then I'm pressing my seam allowance out towards the sleeve. And then I'm folding up about 6 millimeters on the hem and pressing that down and pinning it. And then I'm folding up an additional 3 centimeters, pressing that and pinning it, removing the pins from my previous fold. And then I'm stitching down the hem by machine because this is always going to be tucked in if I'm doing something that's meant to look historic, so it doesn't really matter. And then I am marking where my buttons are going. And in the pattern, you are meant to have false buttons on the outside and snaps on the inside, but I'm actually making buttonholes and putting in real buttons that's functioning as buttons and buttonholes at the front placket. Yeah, and then I'm stitching the buttonholes with the attachment to my sewing machine. Then I am seam ripping the buttonholes and testing it with my buttons to make sure that they go through. And then I'm pinning the placket to the other piece of the placket and just mark where the buttons are meant to go. And then I'm using the function on my machine to stitch on the buttons with my machine. It's very quick and efficient. And then I am trying to choose which buttons I'm going to use on the cuffs, because those buttons I used for the front placket felt too big. So I got a lot of these from the thrift store. So I had 3 different sizes, and I went with the middle size because I felt the smaller ones was too small and the big ones was too big. So it was so the middle ones was the best. And then I'm marking where the buttons are going to go, and then I am stitching them down, because for the cuffs I went with the instructions from the pattern with using false buttons and then snaps on the inside. And then I'm sewing the snaps to the inside. Two snaps, one for each button on the outside. Then I use this method of attaching the under part of the snaps to the snaps I already sewn, and then I'm just rubbing them with my chalk, and then I'm putting it together to see where it's meant to go together. And that's the finished cuff, and the shirtwaist is done. And that's the finished shirtwaist, and I think it looks great. I'm so happy with it. I tried my best in the pictures I took with my dad to look stern and like squint or whatever you call it. I have a really hard time getting a stern facial expression. I'm gonna have to ask people if I make stern facial expressions naturally a lot, because it didn't feel like that when I tried to do it on command. So I'm really happy with it. It's very comfortable, it's nice, it was fun to sew, and I'm already mentally planning how to make some small alterations to the back, because the back is a bit too wide in the waist area, and I want to take that in a bit, and I'm already imagining in my head how to alter it a bit more for my next project. And I also want to make the sleeves a bit longer, because when I stretch out my hand the cuff goes a long way down, and and I don't really like this. But when I'm just holding my arm in a more neutral position, it's the right length. So it was a bit hard to anticipate. Yeah, but otherwise I'm so in love with this shirtwaist. I want to wear it a lot now. Yeah, so I'm very happy with this, and the next video is going to be making her cloak and the sign for her I Ain't Dead sign. I'm gonna make another video for that, so please keep your eye out for that, because that will be the finished look, so to speak. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more of my videos in the future, you may want to subscribe and hit notification bell. May the stars shine upon your faces and have a glorious day. Thank you, and goodbye for now.